going to have a great conversation about what happens inside factory farms and how even farmers are now turning against the industry and joining the vegan movement, which is amazing, am I right? My name's Wayne. I'm one of the co-founders of Direct Action Everywhere. I've been an animal rights activist for 20 years now. I've been a law professor, a litigator, animal cruelty investigator, a grassroots organizer, and now my main role is developing people like you, giving you the knowledge and power you need to be the best activists you can be. And one of the ways we do that is getting stories from inside the industry. And I'm really glad to be able to present to you today someone who knows more about pig farming than frankly anyone I've ever met, because he's worked in pig farms since he was 17 years old for almost 20 years. And that's Brad Johnson, who's sitting right next to me. Brad Johnson is not just a whistleblower. He's going to share some photos and videos with us from inside the industry. He's also an animal liberator, because when he saw that 42 piglets are going to be sent off to slaughter simply because they were too small to make the company money, he decided enough is enough. I'm sending these animals to a sanctuary. And for that simple act of compassion, giving these poor huddling creatures who had never stepped outside, who had lived in concrete pens their entire life, who are destined to be slammed against the concrete by their heads, are thrown into a gas chamber, poisoned with carbon dioxide. Brad faces 2 felonies, potentially years in prison, already spent 30 days in jail, and has racked up thousands of dollars in legal fees. We'll say more about that in a bit. But I want to give a shout out to all the people in the room who've also been on the front lines. And that's people like Alexandra Paul, who was arrested with us last year at the Animal Liberation Conference. That's people like for giving food and water to dying birds in California. And people like Matt Braun, an investigator with PETA, who's brought so much of the most incredible cruelty footage to the public so people can see what's really happening inside these animal abusing facilities. Let's give a shout out to everybody. Against these evil, vile, animal abusing, human rights abusing industries. Because we need more people to do this. But today we're not talking about abuse, we're talking about rescue. And you can move to the first slide. Okay. And we're starting with Brad's story. So Brad's story and mine intersect in really interesting ways, because 20 years ago, Brad was an animal lover when he grew up. His mom has cats, dogs, donkeys, goats, turtles even, rescued turtles. She lives deep in hog country, surrounded by Smithfield slaughterhouses and factory farms, yet she raised Brad as a kid who loved animals. And every time there was a cat or a dog straying on the street who needed some help, he and his family would go out there and help them. At the same time, they were surrounded by people herding pigs everywhere. And everyone thought, well, if you're an animal lover, one of the things you can do is go into the hog industry. So at 17, Brad and I were 17 and around the same year. And our lives diverged. I was an animal lover when I grew up. Brad was an animal lover when he grew up. But at 17, because of the environment we were raised in, I was raised in a family that was progressive, raised in a family that was Buddhist, that believed in things like vegetarianism and veganism and animal rights. Brad was raised in hog country. At 17, we both as animal lovers had paths that dramatically diverged. I went vegan and became an animal rights activist. Brad went into hog farming. And the reason he went into hog farming is because there are no jobs available for people in the rural South, in places like the town he grew up in, with 500 people right now in North Carolina, where there's dirt poor poverty, where there's opiate problems and meth problems everywhere, where all the jobs are being shipped to other countries, and people get paid 60 hours a week, $14,000 a year. Brad was getting less than minimum wage, working at hog farms his entire life. And these are the only jobs available to people like Brad. These are the only jobs available to people like Brad. And Brad went into this thinking, I'm doing this because I'm an animal lover. But here's the reality of the industry. Next slide, please. This is a pile of piglets. And every day when he worked at a pig farm, Smithfield managers would walk through the farms he managed, point to piglets that were too small, or too weak, or too sick, or frankly, they just didn't look lively enough. They weren't strong or energetic enough. What they do is what the industry calls thumping. This is standard practice within the industry. They'd go stall by stall, point to piglets, they'd mark them with blue spray paint, and command Brad to grab these piglets by their hind legs, raise them over their heads as they're squealing in agony because they've never been picked up before in their lives, they've never had anything but violent touches their entire lives, and smash their heads against the concrete. And a lot of times you see these piles of piglets that pile up even more in a landfill or in a dump. Some of these piglets aren't even dead yet. They're just unconscious because they're babies. They've been hit against their head, they're in pain, and they wake up with splitting headaches, fractured skulls, blood coming out of their ears and their eyes, and they're awake in a living tomb, trapped in a pile of dead piglets in complete darkness where they will slowly starve to death. Brad saw piglets wake up from being gassed or thumped all the time. He saw them come back to life, and he knew these piglets were going to die a slow, miserable, horrible death. He didn't want to do it. So Brad would use what a Yale political scientist calls the weapons of the weak. He knew he couldn't save them all. He knew they were going to force him to kill these piglets, or they threatened to fire you. They'd say, you have to kill these piglets, and you have to thump them, or we will fire you. So what he'd do is he'd secretly spirit off the blue marked piglets, all these piglets marked in blue. He'd take them to other crates and pens that are hidden away from the Smithfield farmers, and he'd hope they'd make it back. They'd get some health back. They'd get some more food and nourishment into their bodies. They'd get back on their feet, and hopefully they wouldn't get thumped or end up in a landfill. This is a small resistance, but it built up over the years because he saw more and more piglets die, more and more piglets get thumped, more and more wasted lives and wasted resources, and wasted consciences of workers who were forced to endure this violence. Animals were forced to endure this violence over and over again, and Brad wanted to stop. Next slide. Woo! Brad. But that is only the tip of the iceberg. Because some of the things that happen in this industry, I'm going to show a video in just a second, and I'm going to warn you all to avert your eyes because they're dark and horrible stories that even I haven't heard. In my 20 years as an activist, I haven't heard some of these stories. When you have a commodification system that slaughters at a single company 30+ million pigs every year, 22 million pigs at a single slaughterhouse just a couple miles, a couple hours away from where Brad worked. 1.2 million pigs at the slaughterhouse in Southern California that many of you have been to, that Amy Jean Davis does vigils at every single week. When you have tens of millions of pigs killed in your facility every year, losing 100, 1,000, even 5,000, 10,000 is a rounding error. And so some of the stories and video footage Brad has provided us are things that are beyond the imagination, beyond our worst nightmares. And this is one of those scenes. So I'm going to warn you, this is bad. What happens in nurseries, like the baby pig farms that Brad was working in, and Brad worked with babies because he thought they were cute. His kid thought they were cute too. Brad's got a son named Trey who's 5 years old and his favorite animal is pigs. And every time he comes out of the school bus, he runs over to Brad and says, can we go play with the piglets? What happens to these piglets is they're not treated like living creatures. They're not given any sort of individualized attention. And the scathing North Carolina heat, when you're in a factory farm with 1,000, 1,500, 2,000 other piglets, it gets really hot. They've got a ventilation system. They've got curtains that are supposed to come down during the summer heat, so air will get in, air will get out. But sometimes the mechanisms fail. And because there's only 1 or 2 workers at each of these massive factory farms, because the company doesn't care enough to check their mechanisms, because after all, if something breaks in a few piglets die, it's just a rounding error, things like this happen. Let's play the video. This is a nursery filled with baby pigs who all roasted to death over a few-day period. It got up over 115 degrees in this nursery because the curtains didn't come down. These baby pigs were roasting inside over hours, clamoring each other. At the very end, you can see some of the piglets are even still alive. 1,500 died. A few lucky ones somehow made it out. But even those lucky ones that survived, they're going to suffer brain damage for the rest of their life. They're not going to have much of a life because they're going to be thrown into a landfill within a few hours. 1,500 sentient beings in one day, slowly roasting to death in the summer heat because of one contraption failed and the company didn't bother and didn't care enough to even check. This is a reality of animal agriculture. This is the inherent cruelty of treating living creatures as if they're just commodities. Next slide. And Mac, you can say, but next slide. Okay. But occasionally miracles happen. And with Brad, what happened is he saw these piglets treated like mere things. He saw that this company was throwing away thousands of piglets every single week, every year. They're just throwing them away because they're too little, too weak, or because, frankly, the company just made a mistake and they don't care. And so in November, around the holiday season, the time where we're supposed to be giving, we're supposed to be with our families, where people hate to see mothers torn from their children, when he saw 42 more piglets, seemingly healthy, happy piglets, just too small to be sent to slaughter, all marked with a blue mark of death that would lead to them being thumped or gassed to death, Brad said, I'm done with this. I don't want to keep killing piglets unnecessarily. None of these are sick piglets. They're not being euthanized. There's no excuse for killing them. So instead of marking them blue and thumping them, he skirted them off to a different pen. When his boss told me he needed to get rid of them, he made a posting on Crisis and said, can anyone come get them? So initially he thought maybe someone will pay me and at least I don't have to kill them. But when an animal activist named Erica reached out to him, someone who came to the Animal Liberation Conference last year, learned about the work we've done with Sava Live Poultry, with Pittman Family Farms, with other farmers like Brad's situation himself, to try and turn farmers against the industry, to try and convince farmers to release animals to activists. Erica worked with Brad over the weeks and convinced Brad, instead of sending the 42 babies into a landfill, to send them to sanctuary, where they get a first chance at life. Those 42 lives are still all alive today. And Brad did this Not only because he had compassion, because he believed that the world is changing. People don't want to see piglets thrown into landfills, and he believed even his bosses would understand. And in fact, he did consult with his immediate manager and said, these animal activists are picking up these piglets, is that okay? His manager signed off on it. They came and picked it up, and Brad will tell you in a bit. But it was one of the most transformative days of his life, seeing these people crying and happy, spending loving time with the animals in a way that these animals had never experienced before. These animals went to sanctuary. Okay, next slide, please. But a funny thing happened. So it turns out Smithfield watches Facebook very carefully. They follow my Facebook page. They have sent FBI agents after sanctuaries. They have convinced the government to hand over all my emails, my Facebook messages. They surveil even my location, my GPS, and my phone is tracking me at all times. The FBI knows where I am because I'm an investigator exposing the cruelty inside Smithfield Farms. And they watch other Facebook pages too. And they saw some Facebook posts with a funny hashtag, hashtag NC4242. They saw these pictures of pigs that seemed like commercial pigs, exactly like the piglets that were in Smithfield Farms. And they visited the sanctuary. But they didn't come alone. They came with the State Bureau of Investigation and started scaring the sanctuary by saying, we're going to put you in prison for a long time. Where did you get those piglets? Did you steal them from us? Were you working with the DxE folks? We saw that you went to the Animal Liberation Conference last year. What did you learn there? What are they teaching you to do out there in California? Bring them back to our state of North Carolina. These folks were scared. They were terrified. They thought the piglets were going to be taken away. And so they went to Brad and said, is it okay if we tell them that we got these legally, that there was no stealing involved at all, that they can't be harassing us and targeting us and threatening to take our piglets away? These are our babies. And Brad did a really brave thing. He said, you all didn't do anything wrong. You all did absolutely nothing wrong at all. I will take the blame if there's any harm here. So you go tell the cops that I gave you those piglets. You tell Smithfield the same. And I'm going to take care of everything. And that's what they did. Wow. They told the cops that. And the cops told Smithfield. And guess what Smithfield did next? They went after Brad. But not only did they fire him, they convinced the State Bureau of Investigation to raid the farm, confront Brad with an arrest warrant, haul him out of his workplace where his family and his child also lived, and put him in jail cumulatively over the last few months, 30 days. So he lost his job, he lost his home because Brad lived on a Smithfield farm, he lived on site there with his girlfriend and his son. And they told everyone in the community, a small farming community where everyone has a connection to the hog industry, if any of you so much as give $1 to Brad, if you give him a job, if you give him a ride out from jail so he can get back home without having to walk home, all of you are going to be fired, and we're coming after you next. Many people have now come to Brad with these stories saying, we're scared, we cannot touch you, we cannot walk within arm's length of you, or we're going to go to jail, we're going to get fired too. And in a county and in a state where Smithfield donates millions of dollars to law enforcement, has many of the law enforcement officers in their pocketbook, literally in their pocketbook. There's one sergeant in the county in eastern North Carolina that's getting $120,000 as private security for Smithfield while being an officer in the state police force as well. In a state like that, when Smithfield says something like that, everybody is scared. So Brad lost all of his support. He lost his job. He went to jail for 30 days. He's racked up thousands of dollars in legal fees and bail costs. And last of all, he's lost his family. Because his girlfriend was threatened, his girlfriend kicked him out of his house, he's not allowed back onto that farm because they've said, you're not allowed to be anywhere close to this farm, these pigs, and that's his home. So he's lost everything. So you might ask, how is this possible? How is it the case that these animals who are garbage, we're going to end up in a landfill, in a dumpster, out back of a Smithfield farm, could lead to serious felony charges, could land Brad in prison, that could scare the entire community, and cause, rack up thousands of dollars, tens of thousands, probably eventually in legal fees. And the reason is quite simple, because we live in a society that treats animals as things. Animals are property. And anyone a lawyer in the room, or a law student? What is the most basic element of property? What is the basic right that accompanies property?
Well, I mean, they'll have laws. Ownership of their property because it means it's revenue.
It's yours. It's revenue streams. But there's a basic right, if you remember Pearson versus Post or some of these. When did you go to law school? Maybe a while ago? You probably forget this. But in Property 101, do you remember what how do we define property? What is the difference between property and a person? The basic transfer, yes. So the most basic right that defines property is the right to possession. That if I have the right to possess you, or this thing is property. Well, if that thing has some possessory right of itself, right to its own autonomy, then it's a person. This is the distinction in property and people and persons. Under the law, these animals were not persons, were not living creatures. They were merely property. So even if Smithfield was just planning to throw these animals in a landfill, even if it was planning to smash their skulls against the head or gas them in a CO2 chamber and let them die a living tomb inside of a landfill or a dumpster. It didn't matter what they wanted to do with these animals because they had an absolute right over possession of these animals. These animals had no intrinsic rights whatsoever. Right? And we know this is not true. We know that animals do have feelings. They do have autonomy. They do want to walk where they want to walk, eat what they want to eat, be friends if they want to be friends with. These animals are not things. But under the law, they're treated as mere property. And because of that, when anyone violates the property interest of the owner, even if he's doing something incredible for the animals, incredible for all the local community members, frankly, incredible for himself, his own child, who desperately wanted to see some of these piglets to be saved, it didn't matter. Because the property owner's right to that property, possession of that property, trumped everything. You go to the next slide. So you might ask, how do we disrupt this paradigm? Well, the good thing is, when an oppressed class of individuals, whether it's women, people of color, are treated as property, we don't have to imagine solutions. We can look at the lessons of history. And in fact, in the 18th, 17th, 16th century in the United States and Europe, classes of human beings, including indigenous folks, including African folks, were treated as property. But there was a very important fight, a Supreme Court, or not a Supreme Court, an appellate court case in the United Kingdom called Somerset versus Stewart that established and disrupted this paradigm of people as property and led to the abolition of slavery in the United States and around the world. The case is called Somerset versus Stewart, and this is the judge, Lord Mansfield, who held on this case. Here's the facts in this case. James Somerset was a house slave who lived in the United Kingdom. Scottish merchant owned him. He had bought him in the United States, brought him to the United Kingdom. He had lived in relative luxury as a fairly educated slave. Had never really been in the United States. But in the United Kingdom, he started meeting some people, including free black men, and also some abolitionist activists who said, why are you someone else's property? Why are you someone else's possession? You're a fully sentient, autonomous being. You should not belong to someone else. If you want to walk to a bar, if you want to walk across the street to visit your mother, you should have the right to do that. You should not be the captive of someone else. And so he decided to walk out, and that's exactly what he did. He walked out. He took direct action. He broke the law. He said, I'm going to work with you all. You'll give me care. You'll give me refuge. I'm going to walk out of your house and no longer be someone else's property. And the industry came down hard, just like Smithfield has come down hard on Brad. They said, this is not acceptable. If you start doing this, other people start doing this, and suddenly these creatures that we consider property, these people that we consider property, will no longer be property anymore. They'll be persons. So they went to Lord Mansfield and said, you need to punish these people. You need to arrest everyone, including Somerset himself. And not only that, we're going to punish everyone who's involved. Send James Somerset to a plantation in Jamaica so every slave, whoever dares walk out, realizes you're going to be punished severely. And James Somerset, he knew nothing about Jamaica. He knew nothing about plantations. He was going to be shipped off to a plantation where he would not know the language, he would not know the people, he would not know the work, and he very well probably would have died. Because he didn't have the capacity to survive in a tropical climate when he had lived his entire life in London. And here's what the judge said. The judge said, on the one hand, we have a couple hundred years of precedent in the United Kingdom seem to suggest that slavery is okay. And so I'm caught. I see this legal system that's telling me that animals and human beings and people of color, there's these classes of living creatures that are just considered property. On the other hand, I look at my common sense intuition. I look at James Somerset. He's a good guy. He didn't hurt anyone. He didn't try to steal anything. He just wanted to be free. And I see these people working with him. They're also good people. They're not criminals or terrorists. They're coming to us before court because they're just trying to get what we all want in our life, freedom and liberty. And this is at a time in the United Kingdom where there was a revolution in political sentiment. People like John Locke and Jean-Jacques Rousseau were talking about things like democracy. There's a revolution in the British parliamentary and monarchic system allowing a lot of the people, at least the white male people, to have a vote. So there's a tension between the ideals the nation was holding, things like liberty, compassion, democracy, and how they were actually fulfilling those values in the context of people of color in that nation. So Lord Mansfield was caught between a rock and a hard place. He faced what political scientists call a decision dilemma. On the one hand, it seemed like the law was telling him to do one thing. On the other hand, common sense morality was telling him to do something else. And so here's what he did. He first said to the company, the West Indies Company, which was the largest plantation and slave shipping company in the world in the late 18th century, he said, please, can we just work this out? I don't want to make a hard decision. This is a decision dilemma. This is making me have a lot of heartache. What if we just got you some money and you sold the slave off to someone else who would then free you? Right? And the West Indies Company said, hell no, we want a precedent. We want to scare the hell out of anyone who ever dares working with a slave to get the liberation. Right? We're not going to allow it. And then he went to the abolitionists and said, please, folks, can you just raise enough money so I don't have to make a decision? I'm really caught between a rock and a hard place. You know, I know the law is saying one thing, but I feel like more morals are saying something else, and national law is something else. And the abolitionists said the same thing. Hell no, we want a decision. We want to see how you're actually going to rule. Are you going to rule with the oppressor or with justice? And both sides were confident they were going to win. The West Indies Company was saying, you know, the law is very clear, and we think this judge is going to side. And frankly, there have been many other cases where they're right. Many other cases where judges had slaves hauled up before them. Equally calamitous and atrocious circumstances where a slave, a human being, would be sent off to a plantation very far away just because his master said, "You're my possession and I tell you what to do. You have no rights to yourself." But Lord Mansfield took a risk. He said, okay, in these very limited circumstances, in just this particular case, because this boy, he was like a 21, 22-year-old young man, because this young man has lived his entire life in the United Kingdom, because there's been a revolution in sentiment in our country in favor of democracy and liberty, we're going to carve out a little right that impinges on the possession right of the owner by saying, you can still own this slave. The guy's name, the owner of the slave was Charles Stewart. Charles Stewart, you can still own the slave, but you're not allowed to ship him to Jamaica. And you're not allowed to force any slave to leave this country without their consent. So that seems like a small victory, right? Not the biggest deal. I mean, the guy is still the property of someone else, but in some limited way, Charles Stewart can no longer possess James Somerset. James Somerset was no longer just a possession. He was a living creature who had some limited autonomy. And Lord Mansfield did not expect this case to start a wildfire and disrupt the entire system of slavery, but that's exactly what it did. Because when other slaves heard about this, when they found out their masters wanted to ship them to a plantation, guess what they did? Guess what they did? They walked out too. They said, why don't I just walk out? Like, I don't need to go. I don't need to do this. And this precedent is just giving me the path forward, how I can get out of this situation. I just walk out. And they'll haul me in court, and the judge will say, just like Lord Mansfield said, you cannot ship a slave out of the United Kingdom without their consent. So this small little right that impacted the possession right of the owner started a revolution. And over the next 60 years, the United Kingdom became a leader in the anti-slavery movement. Because initially the government said, we're not going to decide at all. We're just not going to interfere. That's what Lord Mansfield first tried to do. And then he said, we're going to interfere in a very small way to support liberation. But that was enough. That little crack opened up the floodgates. And within 30 to 40 years, the entire United Kingdom Navy was sending sailors out into the Atlantic Ocean, not only to prevent slaves from being shipped from the United Kingdom to the United States and other slaveholding colonies, but to stop anything in the slave trade. They would arrest other slave ships by other nations and bring the slaves back to the United Kingdom for freedom. Right? That small decision started it all. Next slide. Okay. So, but there's other examples too. Does anyone know who this is a picture of? This is a very famous feminist, maybe the first important feminist in the beginnings of the American Republic. Good guess, but Susan B. Anthony was about 100 years in the future. So 100 years forward. So this is around the year 1773. This painting is from.
Is it Betsy Ross?
Close, but earlier. Does anyone know who the second president of the United States was?
Abigail Adams.
Abigail Adams. Abigail Adams was probably the founding feminist of this country. And when you think of women's rights, what do you think? Just shout it out. Think of the right to vote. You usually think about the right to vote, right? But the right to vote actually came over 100 years, almost 150 years after Abigail Adams first started writing about it. And guess what Abigail Adams is most concerned about?
Speech.
Close.
The right not to marry?
Close. It's related to marriage. What she was concerned about was the right that men had to possess women, to control where they moved, what they did, what jobs they had. This is a right called coverture. And under the right of coverture, under the English common law system, both young women and married wives became essentially possessions of their husbands. They had no right to own property independently of the man. They couldn't testify in court. They couldn't vote, obviously. They couldn't even be guardians of their children. Like, their guardianship rights are wrapped up in the man's. Like, they had no independent right to control their own children or to have a child. Their child came out, the child immediately became the child of the man. So this is a right called coverture. And when Abigail Adams wrote to John Adams during the founding of the American Republic, when they're writing the Bill of Rights and the U.S. Constitution, she said there's one thing we need to get rid of, and that is coverture. Because women are not things. We're not these dainty little toys that belong to men where they can tell us what to do. Please, just give us the right not to be someone else's possession. Again, a small right. But it's a right that needed to happen before any other rights could occur. Because if women were just things, they were the possessions of the man, how could they agitate for the right to vote? How could they hold a bank account and start a campaign? How could they own a car? How could they even care for their own children when they just belong to someone else? So that's what Abigail Adams wrote for. And I can go to the next slide. And this is not just a historical fiction. This is still happening in countries today. This is an article in the New York Times just a few weeks ago from Saudi Arabia. Many of you may have heard about similar situations in UAE, United Arab Emirates, where in certain countries there's still a right to coverture, where a man has a right to control a woman. This is an image of a woman in Saudi Arabia who for the first time tried to divorce her husband. In Saudi Arabia, you're not allowed to divorce your husband unless your husband accepts it, because you're considered a possession of your husband. So you can't even seek a divorce without your husband's consent. You also can't hold a bank account, you cannot drive, you cannot leave the country. Anything you do because you're a possession, it's like a chair trying to leave the country on its own. The chair cannot leave the country unless the owner decides the chair can go. And the woman is in the same situation. But this woman did something very daring. She said, you know, F this system, I don't agree with this. I have a child, my husband's abusing me, there are allegations of sexual assault and all sorts of other abuses towards this woman. She said, I'm going to divorce him anyways. And she sought a divorce. She got coverage in the New York Times. And within a few weeks, for the first time in history, a woman who independently sought a divorce and a permanent residency that would allow her to leave the country without her husband's consent obtained it. So she's no longer possession of her husband. She can now leave the country with her dog. Okay. So go to the next slide, please. Let's walk through these 3 steps in the legal paradigm with respect to possession of living creatures, whether they're human or non-human. There are basically 3 steps in all 3 of these systems when it comes to women as property, human beings as property, or non-human animals as property. The first paradigm is when the system actively supports captivity. And these are situations where the government is rounding people up, arresting people. This is like Somerset versus Stewart before Lord Mansfield helped his decision. Right? The government would sweep up all the activists who helped slaves leave, the slaves themselves would get sucked up, and they'd be punished severely, sent out to plantations that were far worse than the lives they had in the United Kingdom, all in an effort to scare people. This is the paradigm we're currently in with respect to animal agriculture. This is why Brad is facing prison time. This is why I'm facing 15 felonies. Because we treated animals as living creatures, as not just the possessions of corporations that want to exploit and profit from them, but as independent beings who have their own rights, including the right to be rescued when they face incredible violence and captivity. The second stage in the legal system's evolution is non-intervention. And this is Lord Mansfield, when he was faced with the case initially. He said to himself, I'm facing a decision dilemma. I don't want to do anything. And that's when the government doesn't act at all, right? When they say, okay, we're going to take our hands off. In the anti-slavery movement, there were these personal liberty laws that were passed, saying local governments would just decide, we're not going to support the federal government. You cannot use local resources to enforce these laws against people who are trying to liberate slaves from plantations. In the immigration movement, many of you have heard of sanctuary cities, right? LA is a sanctuary city, meaning local governments say, we're not going to intervene. We think this is an unjust system. Human beings are not just commodities that can be shipped out because we don't like them. They're not just pieces of garbage. Children should not be separated from their mothers. So in our city, we don't intervene at all. We're not going to support the system. But the third and most important step is supporting the right to rescue. In the anti-slavery movement, they moved beyond personal liberty laws to active laws that would encourage local magistrates and law enforcement to actively intervene. In the United Kingdom, after Lord Mansfield made his decision, the United Kingdom decided to pass laws 30 years from now, saying not only are we not going to intervene, not only going to allow these slaves some limited rights not to be shipped out of the country, but we decided we're going to ship out our naval soldiers, and they lost tens of thousands of naval lives. Navy officers, Navy soldiers in the United Kingdom's fleet died fighting to rescue slaves from ships that were shipping them from Africa to the United States, like against international law. So they're breaking international treaties, trying to save slaves from being shipped from Africa to the United States. And the same thing is true of women's rights. The same thing is true of immigrants' rights. The same thing will be true of animals. Let's move to the next slide. Now, how do we do that? Well, to move from supporting captivity to creating decision dilemmas, we have to find strategic rescue opportunities. Situations where the plaintiffs, or the defendants I should say, are particularly compelling for various reasons, where the rescues are particularly media friendly, and what we know when the public hears about this case, they're going to be as outraged as the UK's public was in the case of Somerset versus Stewart. They'll be as outraged as in the case of this woman in Saudi Arabia who just wanted a divorce of an abusive husband, that can rally the media and public support in our favor. Second, when we get into court, because we will get into court, the industry and these oppressive systems are not going to allow us to just take these possessions away from them. We have to be ready to win legal precedents. Have the lawyers, the political capital, the sophistication in a courtroom to win a small legal precedent. These legal precedents in the early stages will not be a full-on animal imprisonment case. It's not going to be suddenly free all the animals from every factory, farm, and slaughterhouse overnight. What they will do is they'll mark out and carve out some element of non-possessory right for the individuals who are being victimized. Just like in the Somerset case, they've carved out this little right that this individual, this living creature, this living being, this human being, would no longer be a possession for the purposes of trying to ship them out of the United Kingdom. Similarly, we need to win the right to rescue for animals. Carve out some basic rights for these living creatures to be seen as living creatures and not mere possessions for an abusive corporation. And then finally, once we win these small little victories, that carve out some rights for animals, we need to blow these up all over the nation, all over the world. We need to say, we want in California, let's go to New York. Or we want in California, let's do 100 more of these things. And dare the court system to have 100 more rulings exactly like this. And start a wildfire change that sweeps across the nation and leads to the complete liberation of every sentient being on this earth. This is how the right to rescue can be transformed into a full-on constitutional bill of animal rights. Next slide, please. But it all starts with the simple act of compassion. And I want you to remember, again, these 42 lies. One of the reasons this case has been so compelling on social media, and we have a journalist with the New York Times, who's written for the New York Times, who's actually coming to hang out with Brad tomorrow. If you're going to the vigil tomorrow, Amy Jean Davis, I think is the back. Please go to the vigil tomorrow. Sel Elbine, who chronicled the Standing Rock movement for the New York Times, is coming to visit all of us and to meet Brad, because this is a compelling story. The fact that 42 piglets, these 42 piglets that Brad took a picture of, were going to go into landfill. Brad gave them compassion. He's facing serious felony charges for them. This is such a compelling story, but it all starts with the individual stories of the animals. And the reason this is a compelling story is people realize that these individual piglets, they're incredibly cute, they're beautiful, they're just like puppies. Next slide. And this is the life we've given them. These piglets went outside for the first time in their lives. They stepped on grass, on real earth, rather than concrete for the first time in their lives. They looked up the sky. And when these animals go outside for the first time, you often see them just staring up the sky and wondering, why doesn't it end? I'm so used to a roof right over my head. I'm used to a cage that crowds me into a pen that's 2 foot by 6 foot feet. These animals are given beautiful lives where they eat pumpkins, where they have friends, and they smile all day. And when people hear these stories, they are moved to action. They don't want to gas piglets. They don't want piglets to be thumped on the head over and over again. The industry knows this, and this is why they're punishing and trying to put people like Brad in prison. And the solution for all of us is we need to rally to support them. We need to identify more Brads, recruit more Brads, and take out the industry's pillars of support. Because while all of us as vegans and as vegetarians and animal rights activists are doing incredible good for animals, the people who will damage the industry most and most help us transform it and create a world where the workers, the animals, the community of North Carolina can be transformed in a positive and peaceful and flourishing way. The people who can make the biggest difference are the people who are part of the pillars of support for the industry already. Every oppressive system is like a platform that has a number of pillars supporting it. And most oppressive systems are sort of wobbly platforms. There's a bunch of pillars, and it's not very stable because when people look at it, and when they push it a little bit, they realize they don't like it, and that means the platform could fall off. And every single farmer, like Brad, who turns against the system and says, this is not good for me, this is not good for the animals, this is not good for American consumers, this is not good for the planet. It's like you're taking one of those pillars of support out. Because we're not providing Smithfield support. It's people like Brad who are providing Smithfield support. And the reason they need to punish him so severely is because they know that if we keep taking the pillars of support out and start rebuilding another platform that's more solid, more beautiful, more humane, more ethical, more just for all life on this earth, then their platform will crumble, and everyone, including the farmers of this nation, will come to our world, our vision, a world where every animal is safe, happy, and free. But we can do this. There is no difference. I told you about the divergence in paths between me and Brad at the age of 17. At the end of the day, Brad and I are not different human beings. Just because he's white from North Carolina, I'm Chinese from China, he's a Christian, I'm a Buddhist, we're still both human beings who have immense compassion for animals. And what caused our paths to diverge is we lived in different systems, in different environments, where my compassion was cultivated. I met vegans. I had parents who encouraged and supported me in becoming an animal rights advocate, and Brad went in the exact opposite direction. Our paths are now coming back together, unified, in the direction of creating a world where every animal is free, where the support for this abusive industry is taken away from it, where that platform crumbles, and where we build a new world where every animal is given the life and happiness they deserve, including the farmers of this nation. So I'm so excited and honored now to introduce to you all Brad Johnson, who's going to have a little conversation with all of us. Knowledge you just learned today and put it into action, frankly, in the next few weeks. So please stay until the end. Ethan Hamer is going to do a little presentation after we do a panel. But Amy Jean Davis, for those of you who don't know, is the founder of LA Animal Safe. And outside of that big slaughterhouse, every week, for frankly, how many years now? It's like a year or two? 2.5 years. She's also worked with farmers, and including the farmers at Manning Beef, to have animals liberated from these horrendous conditions. And also we have beautiful little Phoenix, who's more of a celebrity than her mother. So introduce all of them. So I thought I'd start by just like asking you about your stories, because I think both of you are huge animal lovers. And it's interesting because you come from somewhat different, from somewhat similar backgrounds, because I think you're from the Midwest.
Indiana.
Right? Yeah, so you actually both grew up in areas of the country where there is a lot of farming. So Brad, why don't you first just tell us about your mom, and growing up as a kid in rural North Carolina, and how you and your mom, I mean, you told me your mom and you really cared about animals, right? Despite the fact you're surrounded by hog farming.
Every animal except for a snake.
And you love snakes.
I do.
His mom loved every animal other than the snakes, and you loved even the snakes. But tell me about what you and your mom would do. I mean, you'd see an animal, and what would you do?
Oh yeah, if she sees one walking down the road that's wounded, she's going to stop and pick it up.
Yeah.
She would go around from house to house, to see if it's somebody's personal pet.
Yeah.
But if nobody lays claim to that pet, it's going home. No matter what animal.
And how did you square? How did you square this idea? On the one hand, you can't hear us. Do we have a microphone?
Yeah, if you want to grab that one, we can figure out how to get it to.
My voice is pretty loud. Hello, hello. And that, can you try and make this mic work? Hello, hello.
Which channel is it? We just
Hello? It's channel 6 and channel 7. Looks like.
Okay.
Where is it? Sorry, everyone, we should have tested this. Oh, maybe it's working.
Try again.
Hello, 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 hello.
Channel 6. Turn it on. There's no on switch.
Hello, 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 hello. Okay, why don't we just try projecting, Brad? Can you try talk as if you're talking to Alexandra even in the back? No? So tell me again. So your mom, you're telling us about your mom seeing animals in distress and going around the neighborhood to find out if it's anyone's personal pet. But how did you square that with the idea that you're surrounded by hog farms and people are also using and killing animals? I mean, did you ever talk about that in the home? That on the one hand we love animals so much, on the other hand we're killing some of them for food?
Not really.
Why do you think that is? It was just an accepted practice?
It's just the way of life in my area.
Yeah. And you've never met anyone who was vegetarian or vegan, right?
I haven't.
Yeah. And I remember, like, of all the people, I think the only person in your community who even heard of what a vegan was your cousin, who's extremely, like, well-educated, really smart guy. And everyone else in the community is like, what the hell's a vegan? Sounds like some sort of space alien? Is that like a new species? You know, like it's from a horror movie or something? The vegans are coming for us, you know? And that's kind of how they feel about vegans, right? They're scared of us. Right? You've been telling us about how all your friends and families are scared. They thought, they thought I wasn't even a real person. I could be a fake person. They saw me in Facebook. Is that a real person? No one would say those sorts of things about animal agriculture. So what is the reaction of your community to the idea of helping animals?
Well, they do see it as me trying to shut down hog farms.
Yeah.
So they're getting a lot of static from that. A lot of people tell me I'm not going to be even able to step back foot around where I'm from. Go to the grocery store, I'm going to have people looking down on me for what I'm doing. That's how they're viewing this whole thing.
Yeah. And Amy, can you tell us about, I actually don't know this myself, I just know you're from Indiana. What's your upbringing like, and how did you, I'm going to ask you for a bit about how you're going to raise your child, because you and Brad have a similarity and they both have a kid, a young kid, and you want to cultivate compassion in. But how were you raised as a child in Indiana?
Well, we grew up eating meat and, SpaghettiOs with meat, with hot dogs and lots of processed meat. My mom did the best she could. She's, my hero, so she did the best she could with the information she had. As a side note, she actually fed us formula that was soy-based because at the time she just didn't think that the cow's milk formula was a good idea. This is breast milk for anybody wondering.
Human breast milk.
Yeah, the human.
It's good, right? Because cow's milk is breast milk.
Yes.
Unfortunately, it's breast milk.
Oh my gosh, see right there. I was locked into my own culturized speciesism. And so, but we're a house full of animal lovers. I had lots of, we had dogs and birds, and my aunt had horses and dogs, and we spent so much time out there with my aunt and those animals. But we never made the connection to the animals on our plates, and it's because we are raised in a culture that encourages us to not think about it, to literally look the other way and don't think about it. And these animals are food, and these animals we love. These animals, don't you dare come near. I will defend my dog with my gun, test me, right? And so it wasn't until I went to college that I started to learn more and decided to choose a different lifestyle.
I want to talk to you both now about diversion paths, because you start out. Hello? That's a little better? Okay, I don't think I need it, but maybe Brad and... Hello? Is that working? No. Okay, so we got one mic. Why don't you share that one?
If that
And
one,
I'll go with that one.
that one just needs to go up.
Go
On
up
his
more?
eyes, probably.
Hello?
So just hold on.
Okay, well, hold on to it for a second. I want to talk to you about your diversion paths, because you started as animal lovers, which again establishes to me the idea that all humans on this earth are equal. It's what happens is that the culture around us, the environment around us shapes us in good or bad ways. But tell us about how you, Brad, decided to work in hog farming and your reaction. I remember you telling me about the first time you worked in a farrowing barn, right? And you realized
The finishing farm.
you first worked in a finishing barn,
Yes.
but I want to actually ask you about the first time you worked in a farrowing barn, because when you first worked in a farrowing barn, you realized you had to kill these piglets, right? And you saw like how violent it was, like just thumping these pigs. So tell us about your reaction to learning about what happened to all these piglets and how many of them were being killed, because there are a lot of them you got killed, right?
Yep, there's a lot, and there's more in the nursery that
Yeah.
has to be killed than there is farrowing.
Yeah.
But a typical litter would be maybe 10 to 12. I've had some have 23, 24, 25 in one litter. But of course, they're smaller pigs. But out of those 25, probably 5 of them, they're gonna,
Be stumped.
yeah.
Okay. And tell us about your reaction when you found out that one of the things they wanted you to do.
Hello, there we go.
All right.
Yeah, that one, Brad.
Is that okay? Did that one, Brad?
Yeah.
Okay. Tell us about your reaction. I mean, you're an animal lover. You go to work at a hog farm, and then you're told one of your job responsibilities is grabbing piglets by their hind legs and thumping them with concrete. What is your reaction to that? And what do you?
I hated it.
Yeah.
I mean, I had to do it or lose my job.
Yeah. And over time, you started to move away from it, right?
Yes, whenever I got into the nursery, my last job, and I became manager, I quit, you know, we've got the gas chamber on site. If we're gonna have to kill a pig, let's use the gas chamber. But I mean, I quit killing them from
Yeah.
that point forward. If they didn't need it, I didn't kill them.
Yeah.
And like you said, you know, I would move them to a location, the Smithfield representative, she knew that they were there, you know. And
Basically, an effort to not have to thump them or gas them. Just
yes,
give them a
yes,
chance.
yes, definitely.
Yeah.
And before we would ship out at the end of our 8-week cycle, you know, she would still come do a final mark off. Now, once she did that final mark off, that pig don't go in the truck.
And that's what happened to the 42 that you saved, right?
That's correct.
Yeah. And just one of the things that's just absurd about this system is it's so mechanized and sequestered that, Brad, you told me you've worked at a hog farm since you were 17 years old, off and on.
Yes.
You've never visited a slaughterhouse.
No.
You've never even seen them. So in Brad's eyes, you know, you were not the slaughterer. You just shipped them somewhere else, and someone else is doing the real violence. Am I right about that?
Yep. I did apply to the slaughterhouse once. I did not want the job.
Yeah.
I'm glad that they never called me back. As bad as I needed a job.
Why didn't you want the job?
I don't like
Killing
that.
animals.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and they're definitely one of the dirtiest, most dangerous, and unpleasant jobs in the world. Nobody likes working in the slaughterhouse. So, Amy G, why don't you tell us about your journey towards activism? And so you're an animal lover, and you're seeing this cognitive dissonance. Your family is telling you we love our dogs to the point we're going to kill someone who hurts them, but then you eat other animals with no questions. So what is the transformation for you? Brad's transformation went from animal lover to someone who's being told, you kill these pigs or you're fired. You've got nothing. You're going to be on the street. Well, how did you, I don't actually even know this story. How did you become an activist, and how did your compassion become cultivated?
It's not a story I love to tell personally, but it's good for people to hear it. Hey, the girl. I went vegan in 2002 after being after approaching a woman who was handing out vegan outreach leaflets, why vegan, and that was the first time that I learned that a dairy cow had to be impregnated and give birth to start lactating, something I'm intimately knowledgeable about now. And it's not easy, so I can't imagine the cows and their grief, but that was the first time I understood that, so that major biological fact was not taught to me. You know, it's still to this moment, it's just unreal. And then I learned about how male chicks are ground up alive in the egg industry because they don't lay eggs. So that was 2002. But I was one of those personal choice vegans. I didn't talk about it unless somebody asked me questions, and I considered it a personal choice. And it wasn't for 10 years till I learned for sure that humans did not need any nutrition from animal flesh or secretions that I realized, well, if we absolutely don't need to eat them, because there was always a question in my mind, well, maybe we need a little bit of nutrition. Maybe one day when I have a baby or get pregnant, I'm going to need to eat a little bit of fish. So I was one of those people that you guys have conversations with today who still think that. So
You're one of those people.
You guys have all probably ran into people that think stuff like that. And so once I learned that we needed nothing from them, then I was like, well, then we have no good reason to kill them and eat them. And that's when I started being an activist on social media. And that's when I lost a whole lot of friends and family members. Yeah, but then it wasn't until 2015 when Toronto Pig Save invited me to Toronto to bear witness at a pig vigil. They were hoping that because I was a finalist on American Idol, maybe a couple media outlets would come out because I was there. And we did have a couple come out, nothing big because I was on American Idol in 2008, so it had been a while. And that was what inspired me to get even more active beyond the keyboard. And then a year later, I founded LA Animal Save. So that was my journey. But my favorite thing is at these vigils when somebody says, "Hey, this is my first time." "Oh, wonderful! How'd you hear about it? Great. Are you vegan?" "Yes." "And how long?" And they say, "Well, it's been 2 weeks now." And I'm just like, thank the universe, because nothing will make you stick to the vegan lifestyle. Then I can't blame pregnancy hormones anymore. Nothing will make you stick to a vegan lifestyle like standing there face to face with an animal that you cannot save, and to see them, to see their faces, and then say, "These are the beings that I'm speaking up for. This is why I bring it up. This is why I will not shut up about it." So for anyone who's, probably no one here is still considering to become an activist. You guys are probably all activists, which is wonderful, but if you know anyone, get them to come to a vigil, get them to be committed the way we all need to be, because these are individuals. They don't deserve to be trapped inside this Holocaust for animals.
Who in this room considers himself an activist? Can we just get a show of hands? That's great. So I see a couple of hands not going up. I just want, and Brad, you can raise your hand. A couple of hands did not go up, and that's okay. And it's brave of you to raise your hand and not raise your hand. The thing I want to say is the most important element of an activist is someone who's bettering themselves, who's developing more knowledge for yourself. So just by virtue of being here today and learning something you can pass on to someone else, you already are an activist. Because that's what it's all about. It's about education at its core. And that brings me to the next point, which is the secrecy of the system and the transparency that's provided by bearing witness and doing investigations. Investigations like the investigation Matt Braun at Peter's done. Please talk to Matt about his work, because it's really powerful stuff, and it takes a toll on people. It took a toll on Brad to be there. But part of the reason we need to bear witness and get out there ourselves and have people like Brad blow the whistle is because of all the lies and the little shenanigans they engage in. And one of the most disturbing stories Brad told me is, we all know CO2 poisoning and thumping are both terrible ways to die. But the industry is moving away from thumping because they know how bad it looks. They see images like that of a bunch of piglets scattered in a landfill with broken skulls and blood coming out of their ears and their eyes. And they know no one likes to see that. Even the farm workers, they hate doing it. They're sickened by it. They don't want to do it. So they move towards CO2 chambers. You've told me some really interesting things about the deceptive things that companies do to make it seem like they're actually moving towards progress when they're not. So can you tell us about the CO2 line that you saw some people at Smithfield, in Smithfield Farms, just leaking out into the air, and why that might be happening?
Yeah, I mean, I asked them, what are you doing? This gas chamber is made to kill pigs, and you're releasing it. I'm still having to slam pigs' heads in the floor. And actually, the farm that I was at, they've got a $250,000 composting machine. Wow. Well, it has been used, but the whole year that I was there, never been used.
Wow.
It was just mandatory. Smithfield demanded it on all of their nurseries.
Yeah.
Never used it.
Yeah.
Well, I never used it, but it has been used. I don't know who.
So tell us about the CO2 line. It's leaking gas out in the air, and why do you think that is, and why is that important?
Well, so they have that bill to show, that they've been using it. It makes it look like they've been following their company policy.
So routinely, what the managers would do is they pull the lines out, and because they could see how much CO2 gas had been used, they just sprayed it into the air. Wow. And make it seem like they had been gassing the piglets, and instead they're just thumping them the same way they always have, right? Because it's cheaper, it's faster, it's inconvenient. You got to haul these piglets off to the gas chamber. You got to do it slowly instead of just grab them and smash them. Grab, smash, grab, smash. Even though it's less efficient, it's more brutal to do it the way that they used to do it. The way they used to do it. The society and our consumers are evolving in ways that don't tolerate thumping. So this is just one small example, and obviously we at DxE have exposed other examples where Smithfield claimed they had abolished gestation crates. I don't know if you knew this. They said they had ended gestation crates. They made a 10-year commitment, and there were gestation crates at Smithfield Farms. And you saw this, we saw this, everyone knows this. Everyone knows this except the consumer out there who thinks to himself, they're happy pigs playing in pastures like that, rather than the pigs confined in crates so small they can't even turn around. So maybe you can tell us a little bit about the transparency that's provided by going to the front lines and bearing witness. Because on the one hand, you have Smithfields saying to the world, oh, don't worry, the piglets are all going to sleep and having a nice death. There's no more thumping. When people like Brad are telling us, no, that gas is going right into the atmosphere. Frankly, it's causing carbon dioxide pollution and global warming, which we know animal agriculture contributes to massively as well. But tell us about the transparency that needs to be provided by ordinary people and how powerful it is for ordinary people to go out there and even just with their iPhone, take a little snapshot of what it really looks like to be at a pig farm or a pig slaughterhouse. So
the first thing you'll see is as the truck is pulling around the corner, the more feces you see on the outside of the truck, you automatically know the farther that truck came from. Some of them come all the way from Iowa. And so the amount of feces, urine, vomit, and blood and throw up inside the truck is crazy. And people think, oh, look, there's mud inside the truck. They gave the pigs mud for the ride. And that's not mud. It's mostly feces. Did you want to talk too? And there's a little bit of sawdust in there, but it doesn't look like sawdust anymore because it's been mixed with feces, so much feces and urine. So to see these pigs crammed in there, more in the front of the trailer because of the weight of the gas tanks they are there, and less in the back, they're terrified, they're scared. I still remember the way the pigs looked when I first looked inside a truck up in Burlington, Canada. They were just like big pink scared dogs. And they don't want to be there. They know something's wrong. Some of them are just completely exhausted, so they're just not responsive at all, even when we're trying to give them water. And so you see just a little bit of what these pigs have had to live through, because the inside of that truck is not very different from where they live their 4 to 6 months of life. These pigs are actually the lucky ones, because their mothers are stuck in gestation and farrowing crates, and their fathers are stuck in boar stalls where they're only let out, however many times a week they're going to take the pigs out and masturbate them. I hope there's no... oh, sorry, Rose. And then, so these baby pigs are the lucky ones, if you can fathom that, for those of you who have been to a vigil. Because they have 4 to 6 months of misery versus, years of living where they cannot turn around on concrete or, rotten wood. And so you get a glimpse of it by looking inside these trailers right outside the slaughterhouse, and knowing that they're so close to their impending doom gives you some very stark perspective. It gives you almost a personal transformation where you can authentically tell everyone in your community, I've seen this in my own eyes. I know what it's actually like. Am I right? Yeah, and so that's the thing about seeing these animals at this part of their journey. Everybody has a different response to it, but you don't know what your reaction will be until you actually go down there and bear witness. A lot of people say, oh, why would you do that to yourself? Well, it's not about us, it's about the pigs, it's about the animals. And you don't know, you might have some really great idea lying dormant inside you that needs to be catalyzed by bearing witness. And you won't know that until you go down there and see them for yourselves. And I was watching a video on why moms are so miserable. I was just, doing some random research. And human moms. And at the end of her video, she was emphasizing how important it is for moms to have contact with adult humans, especially any adults that like children and want to come over and help me for free. Any takers? Right? There we go. I live in Thousand Oaks, so we live far. So anyway, what she said was, what you can say to your friend is that your life will not go unwitnessed, because I will witness your life. And she's just talking about miserable moms in first world countries. But we're talking about witnessing lives that will not go unwitnessed by caring individuals that are speaking up for them. And that's what you do at a vigil, and it's inspiring in ways you don't know how.
And not only you, so many of these videos from vigils have reached millions of people on social media because you capture the right photograph or video at the scene of a slaughterhouse vigil, and maybe 1 million people view it on Facebook or on Twitter and Instagram. And that's kind of the power of Brad's story, because the reason Smithfield targeted him isn't because of the 42 pigs. They didn't care about that. They cared about the hashtag NC42SAVE. They saw those photos. They saw some of those photos get hundreds of shares. You wouldn't think a cute, happy piglet smiling in the sunshine would be a dangerous threat to a company, and that tells you something about the company when this photo is a threat, but they did see this as a threat. And they want to crush photos like this because they don't want people to see this as a possibility. They want everyone to think that there's no way to live. We have to force these animals to endure gestation crates and fair and grief. We have to thump these piglets to death. As they told Job, told Brad, you have to do this. You absolutely have to do this. There's no other way, right? But there is another way. And that's one of the things I want to talk about too today, just briefly, Brad, which this vision, we've been talking about this for the past couple of days, of getting more and more farmers to join this movement and realize that most of you probably don't know this, but do you know who owns Smithfield? The Chinese government owns Smithfield. Right? So Trump is defending Smithfield. These North Carolina politicians are saying, America, let's protect American jobs. And all the profits from Smithfield, how much were you paid again last year? $14,000 a year for sometimes working 60 hours a week. The low minimum wage. Where do you think all that money's going? It's not staying here in our country. It's not staying here for the workers who are actually doing this. It's not even going to the Chinese people who are suffering so much, who sometimes are also working in Smithfield farms now, because Smithfield is exported factory farming to my home country. Guess where it's going? It's going to the fat cats who own Smithfield and the Chinese government. These billionaires who have big mansions and Teslas and luxury cars while they force workers like Brad to work at less than minimum wage. So the vision, Brad, you and I have been talking about, let's replace these Smithfield farms with plant-based farms and vats where we make plant-based meats. You know, where we can grow this food instead of killing animals to make this food. And because we save so much money, and because we cut out this middleman who's taking all the money, the Chinese government, we can increase the amount of wages by 4 or 5x, make sure every worker gets $25 an hour, and no longer kill any animals for food. So what do you think, Brad? Go back to North Carolina, where so many of your friends and families and coworkers are furious at you, saying you're going to cost us their jobs, because 2 pig farms have been shut down even in the last couple of years because activists have sued them, including us. We've been in litigation with them. We've been supporting other lawyers in suing Smithfield and trying to shut down their farm. And we need to show these farmers that this is a future that's good for them too, that we can give them good jobs. So what do you think the response of the farmers is going to be when you and I go back? This Chinese Buddhist?
No idea.
Do you think they're going to be happy?
I don't know.
You don't know?
I don't have a clue.
But we can try.
Yeah, definitely.
And one of the cool things is we've been talking to some of your family members, and when we actually have these conversations, like Wayne, he's got a brother, not me. I'm not talking to him. I don't usually refer to myself in third person. Like Wayne, and these folks here in rural North Carolina, they're saying, "Yeah, I understand this, and I'm gonna help you because I don't necessarily like Smithfield either." Am I right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So what do you think? Do you think it's gonna work?
We're gonna see what we can do about it.
Well, I'm going to ask you, Amy, what is your vision for the SAVE movement for the future? I mean, we're going to keep exposing and bearing witness. We're going to get these viral videos. More and more people are going to go vegan. What's a long-term vision? How do we transform these slaughterhouses? We've got Farmer John, what, 30 minutes away from here?
Oh, no, it's
Less than
like
that.
10.
10 minutes away from here?
Yeah.
How do we transform Farmer John into a sanctuary? Like, let's think about this together. How do you think we can do that? Can we do it? Do you think we can?
Yes.
I mean, they make anywhere from half $500 million to $1 billion in just that plan,
Just that
a year.
plan.
So
While paying people like Brad, the workers who actually supply the pigs, $14,000 a year.
yeah, that's something that not a lot of people know. Who here wants to work in a slaughterhouse, vegan or not? Nobody. Who here wants to thump baby pigs, vegan or not? Nobody. Nobody wants these jobs. And so one of the figures that I've been told by the Vegan Justice League, run by Connie Spence, around 78% of the workforce in the United States in animal agriculture, factory farms and slaughterhouses, are undocumented workers. These people have no rights. Brad doesn't get paid a living wage, and he's a documented worker. So imagine what the undocumented workers have to go through. So we're not going to get there by tearing these people down, by shaming them, and that's not what we do at Vigils. We try to open a dialogue. And so the way that Farmer John is going to close down is by hitting it from every single side. And the good and the bad is that animal agriculture touches so many things in a negative way that every one of those things is an opportunity for us to hit it hard. And so the Dodger Stadium now selling Beyond Meat and Beyond Sausages, and Burger King testing out the Impossible Burger, and Carl's Jr. selling the Beyond Burger, Del Taco selling Beyond Meat. Like, the plant-based food convenience revolution is here and is only going to continue to grow and explode. And then really, people are going to say, well, I would, but it's just too hard. It's like, okay, everywhere you look, there's a vegan option for you to pick. I mean, there is anyway, as long as they don't live in a food desert, because that's another form of oppression caused by animal agriculture, and it's canoodling with, you know, the USDA. You have the option. And so people won't continue to be able to say it's just too hard, it's too inconvenient. So we will turn Farmer John into a sanctuary. It's a small sanctuary for animals to give them their proper space. But we will do it, and it's going to require everyone in this room and so many more people to continue speaking up. And we need to remember the workers. I can tell you, I'm friends with some ex-chicken farmers, and their chicken farm, 4 chicken houses with 25,000 birds apiece, so that's 100,000 birds every 7 weeks. Their chicken farm was handed to them by their parents, and it still was almost $1 million mortgaged, $1 million in debt, because the corporations are the ones making all of the money. The farmers, even on their own land, are barely breaking even, not anywhere near being able to pay down the debt. And so even the farmers, the growers as they're called, are oppressed. So nobody wins when animal agriculture is making money. So we have to do what we can to start to totally make these industries collapse. And we're doing that. We are absolutely doing that. We're sitting here on stage with Brad, who used to work in a Smithfield factory farm. This would be unheard of just a few years ago. But because of his bravery, and because of your support of him and what he's trying to do, by speaking out, more workers are going to speak out, because these people don't want to work there either.
And this revolution is unfolding before our very eyes. Have you seen the protests that happened in Australia, where hundreds of activists across the entire nation sat in peacefully in slaughterhouses and factory farms, blocked streets? Many of them were arrested, rescued many animals. One of our activists in Western Australia is in jail right now, James Warden, because he removed a dairy cow from a veal farm as part of this mass protest. And just this morning in Mexico City, a DxE chapter occupied a slaughterhouse for the first time in Mexico's history. Dozens of activists sat there nonviolently and negotiated with the manager of the farm to release 4 birds of them voluntarily. And it was these conversations, the combination of powerful direct action, showing we'll do whatever it takes to help the animals, but we'll do it with love in our hearts. That we'll talk to every single person who's part of this industry and help you see the vision of the future that's good for you too. And if we can do this, these workers will come around. But there's going to be a cost. And Brad is an example of this. So I want to end, before we pass the mic to Eva, by just asking you, Brad, about the consequences of your act of compassion and the toll it's taken on you and your family. Can you tell us a little bit about that and what it's felt like to be, you know, ostracized by your community for merely engaging in this very small act of compassion that was very big to the 42 animals were saved?
Not a good feeling at all, to be honest with you. You know, many days I wake up and wish I want to, like, you know, wish. I hate feeling like that. I like to enjoy life, but they have ruined my life pretty much. You know, I've got no job. Hardest thing for me to get over is losing my family. That's something that's hard to cope with. And I'm just taking that the best I can.
And there are many ways to help Brad. And I said earlier, and Brad, you told me about this, how Smithfield is basically whispered, and the owner of the farm has whispered to everyone in the area, because they have so much power and control. They own all the land. They're all the land. The people who live in houses, you know, most of them are owned in some way or affiliated in some way with Smithfield. They basically whispered to everyone, you can't even give this guy a ride, am I right? And your car broke down, so you can't even get around in North Carolina anymore. Yeah. And so, you know, one thing we're trying to do is raise some money to support Brad. We've already racked up thousands of dollars in legal fees on Brad's behalf. We're setting up with a lawyer, Bonnie Clapper, who's an amazing lawyer, but she's trying to work with him pro bono, but she's got expenses related to the case she needs help with. So there is a fundraiser at DxE.io/support Brad. One of the things we'll do afterwards is just send us a fundraiser link out to all of you. If you can chip in even a couple bucks, it will make a difference. But the other thing I want to talk about is the fact that we need to recruit and support more people like you. And every year at the Animal Liberation Conference, we've had more and more people, including people from the farm industry, come out. at the big conversions we had in November, where 500 activists got together in Utah, one of the biggest factory farmers in the nation was attended and registered for the conference. He was there with us, and he was the one who released 100 turkeys to us. He wanted to understand what our thought process was. He wanted to understand what sort of world the animal rights activists wanted to create. When we started hearing about our vision, even he said, that's not so bad. Everyone who says they're terrorists and criminals and extremists, I'm listening to this with my own ears, meeting these people and shaking their hands with my own hand, hearing their talks with my own ears, and I realize it's not so bad. It's not so bad. In fact, it might even be a good thing. And we need to expose more of these people to this information, make more relationships like the relationship we built with Brad, that Amy's built with the owner of Manning Beef, and convince more of them step by step to give up the industry and help us move into the future. And that's why we're using the hashtag Farmers for Future. Because Brad is like a farmer from the future, a future where we no longer hurt animals for food. So please come to the ALC and ask yourself what sort of sacrifices you're willing to make. Because Brad sacrificed his freedom for those 42 pigs. He lost his girlfriend and his son because his girlfriend and son both work for Smithfield. They still live at Smithfield Farm, right? A farm that contracts to Smithfield. He's lost so much for the simple act of compassion. And we all have to ask ourselves, when people like Brad are sacrificing so much or going against their entire community, how much can those of us who live in vegan communities, who live in places like LA and San Francisco and Berkeley, where there are tons of vegan restaurants and you're not ostracized, where you do know what a vegan is, and vegans aren't aliens, they're human beings, just like the rest of us. What can we sacrifice? And that's why I want to bring Eve up to talk about some opportunities for action immediately. Thank you very much to Brad and Brad and I are also going to hang out a little bit afterwards and go to dinner if anyone wants to join us. I think we're going to Catholic Gratitude, right, Brittany?
Yes.
Okay. So don't worry, you're going to get opportunities to ask Brad some questions, but Eva, take it away. Tell us what you want to tell us.
All right, so my name is Eva Hamer. It's a little loud. And I'm, is this okay? Is this volume okay? All right, I won't use the microphone. Sounds like I'm yelling.
Everyone in DxE's got a big voice.
Big voice.
We're used to hearing.
So I'm DxE's legal coordinator. I'm not a lawyer, but I'm an activist who supports the other activists who got arrested or face charges. I do a lot of talking to lawyers, making sure they're following up with giving us information about all the different intricacies that are happening with all our different cases. And over the last, 6 months or so, I've had the privilege of working with so many of our activists who've gotten arrested in our mass arrest actions. A few of you are actually in the room right now, so I just wanted to acknowledge. Have you ever gotten arrested for animals? Would you raise your hand? I see. A few others. Well, can we give those people a hand?
He served 30 days, longer than probably anyone in this room, maybe.
Yeah,
he served more time in jail for the animals than anyone in this room, probably. Maybe I'm wrong, but.
And so these are the folks that just inspire me to no end. I get to work with all the folks who are really risking their safety and their freedom to make the world a better place for animals. And so I really feel like I'm really privileged with this role that I have. So last May at the Animal Liberation Conference, which was May 29th, 2018, it was Tuesday of ALC last year. There was a huge action where 500 people went to a factory farm in California. This was Petaluma in Sonoma County. And we walked in, about 50 of us walked in, and we saw animals who were there in this egg farm. This is an organic egg farm. This is something that they really want you to believe is humane. Found animals who were sick and dying, who were not able to get to food and water, and took, 39 hens out? We were able to bring these animals to safety walking straight by police. Police were so kind of just aghast at the situation, didn't see it coming, didn't really know what to do. At one point, Wayne was negotiating with a sheriff and called me up to see a bird who was in my hand who was so sick she was panting. It was a really, really hot day. I think she hadn't had water in quite some time, and just asked for her freedom. The police didn't really have the heart to take these animals from us. We were able to walk these animals straight off the property, and I mean, we had planned to get arrested that day, and the police almost didn't want to.
Does that remind you of Lauren Mansfield? It's exactly like Lauren Mansfield in Somerset versus Stewart. He didn't know what to do.
But we really, we had planned on doing this. So we walked straight back onto the farm, past police in riot gear, ready to go right back on if they weren't going to stop us. And so graciously, they arrested the 40 of us who planned to get arrested. we went to jail on one count of trespassing, and it was an easy process to bail us out. I think we spent 17 hours in custody. There were so many of us to process. Now, in September 29th, this last year, about 200 of us went back to a farm in the same county. This was a chicken meat farm that supplies Amazon, another free-range place where there's outdoor access for the animals, but no one has ever seen these animals go outside. So I don't know if that counts as access, but it kind of looks like it from the outside. 58 people entered the property, and, well, 59 people entered the property. And we went inside farms, found animals who were, these were chickens used for meat, so they grow so fast, as many of you know, that their legs will splay. Often they're not able to walk, not able to just even get themselves to their food and water sources. And we picked up some of these animals too and tried to carry them out. And this time the police had gotten a little bit more serious. They were a little bit more excited to arrest us, a little bit more insistent that we stop and not take these animals out. They ended up taking some of the animals out of our arms and sending them to animal control, who ultimately euthanized them, but they let one little bird go. That's a bird who we named Rose, and she's living happy and safe to this day in a sanctuary because of the mercy, honestly, of one police officer who just couldn't bear to see her die. 58 people were taken to jail that day, and it was a little bit easier to get arrested this time. They kind of swept up a whole bunch of people who were on the property. So everyone minus the one activist who was allowed to carry this bird Rose off the property, they all got taken to jail immediately. And another difference here is that instead of being arrested on one count of misdemeanor trespass, they were arrested on 2 felonies and a misdemeanor. So what that means for the arrest process, now these people weren't doing anything different. They're not actually going to be convicted of felonies, I hear, is that their bail is so much higher. That these people were held on $20,000 of bail, and it wasn't something we totally expected given our very kind treatment the time before, and so we bailed all these folks out, and a few people decided to stay in jail, and you were one of them, and I was one of them, and it was a 3-day experience in jail. The first day we were held in a waiting area. It was men and women together in this. I think about 40 of us fit in this one room at a time, and so some people were in cells, but most of us were in this big waiting area where they were playing just the worst TV you've ever seen. And
Jersey Shore over and over again. Someone's gonna like jail. Who was that? Who was that? I want to find out. Who's sliding up?
Yeah, come with us next time.
Come with us next time.
And so for the first 24 hours, that's what it was. Sitting in this room, they won't let you sit down, they won't let you walk around, they won't let you lie down on the ground even, like you're just kind of deprived sleep for a while. It's a little bit rough. And after that, when folks were very slowly processed and bailed out and released, the 7 of us who were left were processed and put into cells. And I'm telling you about this to kind of get you familiar with what some of these people go through when people decide to get arrested. Because I think that in the future, we're going to see even bigger numbers. We're going to see escalation on our part, because as far as the police can escalate and try to scare us, we can respond and say, hey, we're not afraid. We know what's coming and know that you might put these trumped up charges on us, call it felony burglary to stand on property and take photos. It's what happened to some people. We can come back with even more and more people, and there's a point when their resources run out, and they understand that no matter how many other sheriff's departments they call in, no matter how much they're prepared, they can't break the commitment of these activists to keep taking action for animals. So I find that super inspiring to get to work so directly with so many of these folks. And so just to get back to jail, we were put into cells. The people on the women's side of the prison were put into cells 2 by 2, so we all got to room with other activists, which I was very grateful for. I know.
It's like summer camp.
Yeah, it was kind of like summer camp. Like I don't want to minimize like really terrible experiences that some people have in jail, because I know it's not a safe place to be. That you hear about people kind of, you know, having really, really terrible outcomes just from being held for a little while. But for us, the experience was relatively easy. We were put in cells 2 by 2. I can really only, you know, speak to my experience, and I'll let Wayne. His was a little bit different, being the only person on the men's side, wasn't able to be kind of housed with another inmate. But we were actually given vegan food, we were given books to read, and then after 2 days we were brought in front of a judge who just let us go completely with no bail money at all. I expect that in the future, when, not if but when, there are large amounts of activists arrested, I hope that those activists kind of are prepared enough to consider just staying in jail for, it can be about 48 hours if you're arrested at the right time of the week. But just, I recommend Mondays, Tuesdays, and Wednesdays. If you're thinking about it. Because you get 48 business hours, and the weekends are a little, they don't count, so. Earlier in the week is better. So I would hope that folks would, you know, think of staying in jail, which is why I kind of talked a little bit about this this experience.
Why 2 days?
I mean, that's
a legal requirement to be presented before a judge within 48 hours.
So you could be held for that long, but you really shouldn't be held for much more. So between May and September, we hadn't heard anything about these trespassing tickets, trespassing charges or arrests. So no one had pressed charges on these folks. Their bail money had been given back, and they hadn't heard anything more. After September, after these 58 arrests on felonies, we did hear something. They had kind of thought of these 2 events as one. And our folks who, it became a very complicated system, and so our folks who were arrested just once out of those 2 times were treated one way. Folks who were arrested both of those 2 times were treated another, except for 6 of our activists, including Wayne, were charged with 7 felonies each. And these are, it didn't have to do with whether they were arrested once or twice, what they were really doing, whether they had even gone into structures or gone into barns. They were all, these 6 people are being charged with 4 counts of burglary, 2 counts of conspiracy, and 1 count of grand theft of fruits and vegetables. Because the law thinks that birds are vegetables. They are not.
Another important lesson from today. Birds are not vegetables. Why not try from this?
And so as we're fighting these totally trumped up charges, I think it's really, really important that folks consider escalation, consider what we can do to get more involved and show the industry that we as a movement are not afraid. And like Wayne said, the Animal Liberation Conference is coming up May 29th through June 4th up in Berkeley. We're going to be taking, how many people are registered for that already? Oh wow, that's a good.
Let's get all those hands up soon.
Man,
we're going to tell you about why you didn't come the second time.
My hand wasn't up, I'd feel like I was really missing out right now. Yeah, so I can't encourage enough that folks come. They're going to be training so that you can get prepared to take bolder action than you have before. And of course, not everybody can get arrested. And that's not right for everyone. You know, if I had a particular job situation, a particular immigration situation, a particular family situation, I wouldn't have. But so many of us who are in the right time in our life to make a sacrifice are going to be able to get trainings and meet people and get networking opportunities to really learn how they can then ramp up their involvement in the movement, whether that means taking risks or not.
We're supporting others who are, like Brad.
Yeah.
Because there's so many ways to support those who are facing prosecution.
Absolutely. Folks have suggested that I try to stay out of jail so I can do my best job supporting other people who do, since that's my role here at DxE. You know, calling the lawyers, calling the jails, getting people out, getting people connected with all the support systems that they need. And so, you know, I definitely understand the situation where we're not all going to take increased risks, but in terms of trainings, in terms of learning more and more about how all the different ways that we can get involved further, the ALC is definitely the place to do it. So I can't encourage enough that folks register for the ALC, and you can find that at DxE.io/ALC, which stands for Animal Liberation Conference. So can we take some questions?
Yeah, well, thank you all for listening, and thank you, Eva. I want to just emphasize again how important this conference is, because when you look at cases like Lord Mansfield's case, or the fight for women's suffrage and women's rights, getting people who are willing to destabilize this norm that oppression is okay. Right now we live in a nation where people like Brad who have compassion, they're normalized into an oppressive system, where even though he doesn't want to kill the pigs, he's told, literally, you're going to lose your job. How can you possibly become a compassionate person in a world where your family's going to be put on the street when you show your compassion towards an animal? We're trying to destabilize that by normalizing the challenge of the system. And to do that, we need more people to participate. That doesn't mean you have to go to jail. In the civil rights movement, when thousands of people went to jail, there were millions of people who marched. In the women's suffrage movement, people like Susan B. Anthony went to jail. She voted even though she was not allowed to vote. But there were tens of thousands of others who wrote letters, who gave funds, and supported the people who are willing to go to jail. So it takes a village, and there's all different roles. Each of them are equally important. But the ALC is the best place in the world to find your role in this movement, to find your passion, and it will transform your activism. We have Bernard Lafayette. Does anyone know who Bernard Lafayette is? So he was the trainer of the civil rights activists. He was Martin Luther King Jr.'s right-hand man during the civil rights movement in the 1960s and 70s, training all these activists to march right into Birmingham, get arrested, get beat up, and come out victorious. He's going to be training our activists. We have, does anyone know the Extinction Rebellion protests that are happening all over the world? You've been watching this? Yeah. Huge protests. Roger Hallam, the founder of Extinction Rebellion, is going to be at ALC, teaching us what he knows and learning from us as well. Glenn Greenwald, the Pulitzer Prize winner, who broke the Edward Snowden NSA surveillance story. He's going to be with us at ALC, supporting us. And 1,000+ other amazing activists who are going to teach you the things you need to know to be the best activists you can be. Finally, on a personal note, my big trial in Utah is coming up on November 21st, 22nd, and 23rd. If I lose, it's probably going to be Utah or North Carolina, which could mean I'm in jail for a few years. I thought last year might be my last Liberation Conference. This year, it looks like I'm going to be able to make it to May, but this could be my last time to hang out with all of you. So come to the Animal Liberation Conference for me. But don't worry, even if I go to jail, I'll write you all lots of letters, and I'm still not going to have a lot of fun in jail with my other inmates and try to make all of them vegan. Yeah. I think Brad went out. Brad is dealing with a little bit of culture shock. He's never been in an urban area like Los Angeles and been around so many people. Please give him a thank you if you see him, but you know, he's kind of handling the stress of having so many people around for the first time in his life. So if anyone has any questions, you can probably ask him personally afterwards. He might step back in a moment. But does anyone have any questions for me, for Eva, or for Amy Jean Davis? Please, go ahead.
Yeah, if you don't mind, I have two. I'll make them quick.
Please.
First of all, I'm Commissioner of Animal Services for the City of Los Angeles, and I want to thank you for being here and for what you're doing. And it's great to see that there are other cities that are as active as we are, and it's really an honor to have you here.
Awesome. I'd love to talk to you more about your work.
Well, definitely. And
thank you for banning fur in the city. That was an amazing victory, and now it's going to take it to the entire state, right?
Well, we're doing some good things.
Yeah, you are.
So a couple of quick things. First is I also work with the Non-Human Rights Project. And the Non-Human Rights Project, you probably know, is fighting for the legal personhood of animals, therefore giving them innate rights. And I just want to make sure that we work together with you on that.
Absolutely.
The second thing is, and some of you may have seen the video from Jane Unchained this week, but so I held one of the first public hearings in the country in the commission talking about the insemination of animals. You know, and I know there are children here, but it's the rape of animals. And what it was based on AB 611, which is Assemblymember Nazarian's bill, which would felonize sexual assault on animals. And this was actually something that I supported, and probably a lot of people in the room really supported. Except that Nazarian, who was a friendly member of the Assembly, actually exempted the meat and dairy industry from the law. So we held a hearing in the commission talking about why, just asking the question of a friendly member, why would you do that? And I think it's a really important thing for us to now start discussing in other public forums, which is there is an illusion among the public that there is consensual intercourse going on between bulls and cows, and between sows and boars. And it's an illusion, it's completely untrue, and there's no way that factory farming can be supported without rape. And so the question I wanted to ask from Brad was if you could tell us a little bit of what we don't know about that process in a way that isn't going to disturb too many of the children in the room. But in the absence of him, is that something you guys could speak to? Because I think it's something it's uncomfortable to talk about, but it's got to be discussed.
Yeah, right. So I could say a lot about this, and Brad can too, because he's worked in gestation and pairing facilities and nurseries. So the way pig farming works is there's basically 4 stages. There's a gestation crate, which is where the mother pig is forced into a 2-foot by 6.5-foot crate, 12 square feet of space for a 600-pound animal for, for 60 days or so. She's impregnated and stays in that crate. And then when she goes to give birth, they stuff her into a farrowing crate, where she'll give birth and stay for 21 days. Then her babies are taken from her and they go to the next stage, which is called a nursery. So after 21 days, they stay in a nursery for something like 8 weeks, 50 or so days, to the point that they're about 50 pounds. When they're about 50, 60 pounds, they go to what's called a finishing barn. The finishing barn is the last stage, where they go from 50 to 250 pounds and they get loaded up on the trucks and sent off to a slaughterhouse. But these first 2 stages, you're right, they're incredibly brutal, and it's incredibly violent what happens to these mother pigs. And one of the things that you'll see very commonly, and Brad could talk about this, is various sexual injuries. And one of the most common ways that pigs end up blue marked at the end of their life, rather than going to the slaughterhouse or going to the next stage of farming, is some sort of sexual organ injury. For example, a ruptured testicle. And Brad would just call these ruptures, where the pig's testicles, when they castrate the pigs, they just tear their testicles off with no painkillers at all, and it's as painful as you can imagine that being. Brad, we're talking about ruptures and what you were saying earlier. But another thing that often happens, and we've seen this a lot, some of our investigators expose this, is vaginal prolapse. Because if you forcibly impregnate an animal over and over and over again, right, with no, I mean, Brad, you were telling us, how much time did they get after they had a family before they were forcibly impregnated again?
I want to think it was less than a week.
Less than a week.
Right.
So they get less than a week of free time and space after having their babies taken away from them, 21 days after giving birth, then 1 week, and then they're forcibly impregnated again. Did you ever see a vaginal prolapse? You know what that is? Where the vagina comes in? Okay. But you weren't working that often in gestation.
I worked in fair.
Yeah, so he's not working that stage. So in gestation crates, you often see mother pigs who are taken from after farrowing, they're forcibly impregnated again, and their vaginas are literally coming inside out. Like you can see sometimes as far as their uterus is coming out. Right? And they're torn up, you've seen that?
I've seen that.
So he's seen uteruses coming out of these mothers' bodies. And this is brutally painful as you can imagine. Because, and one of the terrifying things is, there's this mythology that group housing is going to be better for these poor mother pigs. Does anyone know, under Whole Foods standards, Whole Foods has these wonderful standards where they say, don't worry, we care about animal care, we care about the Global Animal Partnership, we're giving animals. We used to have this big sign at the Oakland Whole Foods that said, animals raised with care. Anyone know in group housing for mother pigs, how many square feet does a mother pig have to get under the general standard of step 3, which is most of the pigs go through step 3? Any guesses? How many?
4 by 6?
It's 15 square feet. Now, guess how many square feet there are in a gestation crate about? 14 square feet. 13 to 14, so 2.6.5 or 2.7.
Right.
So they get about the same amount of space. And the problem is, if you have a vaginal prolapse and you're around, mother pigs are starved, right? They're not given enough food because pigs are naturally omnivores and they want to eat a lot, but we genetically bred them to be like chickens, where they want to eat and eat and eat. That's why they grow so fat. But mother pigs can't get too big because then they become obese, they collapse on the ground, and they can't walk, they die, they can't even give birth. So they're starving at all times. They've been genetically bred to be so hungry, and then they've got this pig who they're crammed in this group housing, 14 square feet of space each, who's got a uterus coming inside out. Guess what happens? They start eating the uterus. They start tearing at the vagina of another pig. And this pig is constantly squirming and she's desperately in pain and trying to get away from the other pigs. So group housing is no panacea. This is not a solution to the problem. The solution is to give the animals the love and care they deserve, not to torture them in a slightly different way. But this is just one of the examples of the horrible violence, the sexual violence that animals face. And when you think about Me Too, we have to think about all the victims of sexual violence.
Right.
Not just women, not just LGBTQ folks, not just people of color, not just white people. We have to think about all the victims of sexual violence, and that includes the animals. So thank you so much for making that point, and we love to work with you on that legislation. At DxE, we have a partner group called Compassionate Bay that banned fur in San Francisco, banned fur in Berkeley, and is working hard to ban fur in California as well. We'd love to work with you on making sure that exemption is not included in that law. So reach out to me and let's talk, okay?
And I'd love to work with you too. I mean, one of the biggest things that we need to do is we need to stop exempting the meat and dairy industry from animal cruelty laws. It's time.
So here's one great thing. Here's one great thing, one great reason it's a good place to do direct action in California. Unlike most farm states in the nation, California is a huge farm state. But thankfully, we've got a lot of other industries too. And this is not just a farm state. This is a tech state. This is a Hollywood state, an entertainment state. So unlike Iowa and North Carolina and Utah, first of all, there's no ag-gag law. So taking a photograph itself isn't a crime. They can get around that by charging burglary, which is what they did to us. But the second thing is, there's no exceptions to the animal cruelty laws for animal husbandry. There is for slaughter, but factory farms are actually illegal because under Penal Code Section 597, inflicting unnecessary cruelty on an animal is illegal. It's a felony potentially. And how can you look at a mother pig who's been serially sexually assaulted over and over again with 1 week between each sexual assault to the point that her internal organs are coming out and say this is not unnecessary cruelty? This is beyond necessary cruelty. This is grotesque, egregious, unacceptable cruelty. Yet the farming industry has completely exempted itself from any sort of scrutiny, and when folks like Eva and I and Brad have reported cruelty, instead of going after the animal abusers, they've gone after the rescuers. But the good thing is, because we have these very good laws in the state of California, our lawyers, who include some of the best lawyers in the state of California, feel that we're going to win. And bringing it to your last point about the NHRP, Somerset versus Stewart is a case Steve Wise cites all the time. The thing that Steve Wise also knows, and this is the reason he works with us in grassroots activists, Somerset versus Stewart would not have happened if someone hadn't challenged the law.
Right.
Someone had to go out there, and it was Somerset himself, but also the activists who worked with James Somerset, and say, get the hell out of there. Don't worry about the authorities. The authorities are corrupt. They're not acting in accordance with natural law or the morals of this nation. If we get you out and we start talking about this issue, we're going to be able to keep you out. And we have to feel the same way with the animals. We have to have the same confidence those activists had in 1773. Just take those animals out, dare the court system to come after us, and when we win, then the floodgates will open. Woo! Let's go ahead, Pat. Oh, please, go ahead.
If anybody has any questions about the vigil. Does anyone have any questions?
Oh, sorry.
Ellen, did you have?
I don't know if it's so much a question or just something I'd like to share. You know about it too. You've been talking about it. But I'm kind of worried about how to protect the slaughterhouse workers that we are in contact right now. I'm personally in contact with about 2 to 3 slaughterhouse workers from Farmer John, including one former one that wants to basically tell us everything. He's worked all over the whole facility for 3 years. And then also we have one that's on the inside that actually came to our vigil on Wednesday night. So if you don't know our group, we're Animal Alliance Network, and we hold pig vigils on Wednesday nights. And we had a guy go park in the Farmer John parking lot, walk off the job, and come over to the vigil with us. Woo! This last week. We're doing our best to get this information and to get in there, and I'm working really closely with Amy with it. But I've established a certain amount of trust with these workers, and I'm still working on that. I mean, they also have a truck driver, but I want to be able to protect them. So that's part of like my worries. I don't know if that's really a question for you or everybody up there.
Well, Wayne would be the best person to talk about that. But if I could put a pin in things, if anybody has a question specific to the pig vigil happening tomorrow night that they want to ask me, now's your chance because it's nap time and I gotta go before she gets
Who's coming to the vigil tomorrow? Please try to come, because again, the writer who chronicled the Standing Rock movement in the New York Times is going to be there. So I haven't even told you.
Yeah.
Saul Elvine's going to be there. He's going to want to see big numbers out there, because if there are 20 people out there, Saul's going to say, "Wow, there's not that many people." Well, if 100 or 200 of us come out, he's going to say, "This is an amazing movement."
Yeah.
So this is a chance for you to represent the animals. Come out to the vigil. Come out to all of them.
Yeah.
We come tomorrow. Join Brad and me and Eva and Amy Jean tomorrow night at the vigil. But any questions for Amy Jean? What time?
7 to 9 p.m. Did you have a question?
No, I'm sorry.
That's what I was going to ask.
The time. It's just the regular, well, we're going to go a little longer, 7 to 9. 10, I think we're going to start.
Because we'll probably get there at around 8.
Yeah, so we're going to go 1 hour later, you know, so yeah. And if anyone wants like the details on the vigils, you can text the word pigs to 66866, 66866, and you'll get the weekly schedule with the details. But yeah, so Ellie Animal Safety does the vigils on Sundays, Animal Alliance does them on Wednesdays, and Ellen is in the back there on the computer. She's a very beautiful pregnant lady. So if you guys have further questions, she can answer them. So we're going to get going. But thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Amy. Do you want to try and answer the question? Since you worked with Brad, I mean, Eva was actually the first point of contact with Brad. And the question was, how do we protect slaughterhouse workers? And Eva, as our legal coordinator, I can answer too, but you want to take that initial stab at that question?
Sure. I think that whenever anyone's thinking about taking a legal risk, it's really important that they have some contact with a lawyer, somebody who can really be their advocate and let them know what their risks are, so that they know, so they can make an informed choice. Not so that they can necessarily avoid risks at all costs, but so that they can make an informed choice. And I mean, I definitely know that some workers want to remain anonymous when they give us information, and some don't. And I think that respecting whatever that wish is really important.
So in California, it's actually another reason to do actives in California is there are very specific protections for whistleblowers, and including in California is one of the rare states that has a provision in California law, under the California Constitution, I even believe, that political participation is not a grounds for firing someone. So if someone had come to a vigil and they got fired, if you set up the documents well and you had some sort of paper trail verifying that was the reason, maybe even if you're recorded and your supervisor saying, can't believe you did that protest, you're fired. California does have some provisions of law that can cause problems for the industry. And giving a worker at Smithfield these resources, hooking them up with a lawyer, even before they decide to do one of these brave acts of dissent is really important. But honestly, the most important thing is you got to be their friend. And that means having a community around them, helping them realize if they do something like what Brad did. Brad, honestly, is just, Brad's kind of a miracle. I don't understand that, because there are no stories like Brad's where he doesn't know any vegans or vegetarians. The first vegan he met was Erica, who's not in his community, who just found his posting on Craigslist. Very few people are able to do that. People are much more willing to do that in places like LA, where they can come to an event like this. So I'd encourage you to invite them to events like this. Let them meet all these people. Let them be a part of the community. And so when they do come out and tell their story, they've got as many people coming out to support them as hopefully Brad will get. Right? Because they need to see that when they engage in this active dissent, when they blow the whistle, they're not going to be railroaded and thrown into the truck, and no one's going to be there to help them. And the same is true of all the defense. I think that's especially important for people who don't have that sense of support. You don't have to worry too much about supporting me. A lot of people support me. But someone like Brad, before we met him, he had no support. So we need to provide these people support, get them some relationships, get them out of that system, because it's almost like they're trapped. They're trapped in this horrible little bubble of animal agriculture. We need to pop that bubble and show them that they have connections with other people in the world who will help them move forward, even if the industry does come after them. Any other questions? Well, let's go to Matt, and then back behind Matt. Go ahead, Matt.
Yeah, I just wondered if Dave could help us paint a picture of Brad's case and Sierra's case, since they're both being charged for rescuing animals in North Carolina. One's a 17-year-old activist, and Brad is obviously a pig farmer. And like, how is DxE helping, and how are the cases different? How are they similar?
Do you want to say something about Sierra's case first, so everyone knows?
Yes, of course. So Sierra and Arwen in North Carolina are both being charged with conspiracy and with burglary for rescuing pigs from a Smithfield farm in the state. And so they're definitely, they're similar. It's a similar case to Brad's in that it's in North Carolina and that it's against Smithfield. They actually have the same lawyer working with both of them. Another similarity. And it's also, it's the way that they feel about their cases. I'm sure is, from talking to all three of them, is really just worlds apart. Because Sierra and Arwen, they had a support system before they even started. They knew other activists in their area. They knew activists all around the world, and they had a really strong sense that they were doing the absolute right thing, that they were willing to make sacrifices for it. In contrary, Brad has been honestly a victim of industry for a really long time, didn't even really know that he was taking a risk when doing the right thing, when doing the common sense thing and releasing animals to a sanctuary. And honestly, like, didn't give himself up like Sierra and Arwen sort of are by saying, like, okay, I'm going to take this risk and I'm going to accept the consequences that happen to me. And so I think we're so lucky that Brad is speaking out and telling his story and telling the world what happened, because so many people in that situation would say, hey, I didn't sign up for this, I just want to make it all go away, and would be too afraid to speak. So nothing but admiration to anyone who speaks up against such a international giant who has so much power.
I'd be interested to see, I am interested to see, like, the results of these cases and how they're viewed by the public, because people might be more willing, or general public might be more willing to side with Brad
Yeah.
because they can relate to him. You know, he has been providing their food, and of course these animals were trash anyway. You know, they were blue marked. Whereas they see Arwen and Sierra as extremists, as animal rights activists, and they should be charged. You know, when really they've done the same thing.
Yeah.
I love that.
That would be a really interesting comparison. And of course, the pigs that Sierra and Arwen were rescuing, they were sick too. They were going to end up in that same blue mark. Yeah, that same situation where they would be thrown into a dumpster. They would never make it to the grocery store. But I think that you're totally right. I think that some people will look at Brad's situation and see someone who was in the right place at the right time and did the right thing and is being punished for it unfairly. And people might see Sierra and Arwen as people who were already vegan, already kind of depending on who the audience is, might find that less easy to relate to.
I want to just reinforce the biggest difference between Brad and Sierra's case, which is the network they have behind them. And if you want to obtain a network like that to mobilize the support for you, if you're ever charged for something like this, frankly, even for saving a dog or cat, come to the ALC. Because I met Matt, I think I met you before DxE Forum, but we met each other for the first time. We hugged each other for the first time, both having been inside these abusive facilities, and we frankly cried together for the first time at the Forum, which is the precursor to the ALC. Brittany, right next to him, pretty sure we got to hang out and get to know each other because of these big convergences. We all come together in the same space. And the ALC is so different from other conferences because it's not just this big powwow where we talk about all the great things we're doing. We're training people for putting you into action. Like every day of the ALC is on the ground, practical skills that you can use back in your home state, your home county, your home city, so you can be the best actors you can be. And not only do we train you, then we put that into practice right away. Like we train people in nonviolence, and we test your nonviolence and say, do you understand the theory behind nonviolence? Can you actually maintain your cool when someone's yelling at you? When police are arresting your friends? When people are getting beat up? Can you be like the civil rights activists in the 1960s who stood so strong and so calm, even when Bull Connor was coming down on them with police dogs? Where we teach you these things, then we put that into practice. And the bonds you form with other activists, they're lifetime bonds. I mean, Matt's going to be my friend for the rest of my life, and I'm grateful you came to the DxE Forum a couple years ago. Because I wouldn't know you about this. We would just be Facebook personas. And like, Facebook's great, but Facebook doesn't make for a real relationship. So, okay, we have one more question here, and let's go to the front, and then we'll probably close this portion of the meeting, but I'll announce that I think we're going to Cafe Gratitude afterwards. So we'll probably hang out here for a bit and then go to Cafe Gratitude. So one question back there, one question up here. Go ahead.
Wayne, given the body of evidence that we have, what is the likelihood that a jury would convict somebody who rescued a chicken?
I think it's pretty low. Our lawyers in Sonoma County, in this mass chicken rescue where they did charge 58 people, we've got one of the best lawyers in California who says there's not a chance in hell they're going to convict you. They might get a hung jury, they might scare some people in the meantime, but they're not going to convict you. Because you've got too many legal arguments, and you've got too much public support. When people hear about hens who are starving to death, who have empty crops and empty stomachs, hens with broken wings and legs who've been taken out of a facility. One of the hens we took out had a gaping hole in her side that was so deep you could see her muscle and bone, and the flesh around that gaping hole was rotting. And this is not our statement, this is the county's own veterinarian saying these things. Saying, we inspected these animals, and this is a living animal who had a hole in her side and was rotting to death. So what is the likelihood that a good person who believes in common sense decency is going to convict people for trying to help an animal in that situation when the factory farm itself is getting away with criminal animal cruelty, right? So these cases, not only do we want to get acquitted, by invoking legal necessity, we want to put the industry on trial by saying we had to do these things because this is a public emergency. When our environment is being destroyed, when our animals are being tortured, not our animals, but the animals, our fellow creatures on this earth are being brutalized, we have a right to go and rescue them. And let's dare the industry to come after us and put them on trial in these court cases. And that's our hope, and that's why I'm not going to plea bargain. I'm planning to go all the way to trial, even if it means I lose and go to prison for a few years. So we had one question here.
I'm just wondering, Brad didn't do that secretly. He had mentioned having his immediate supervisor kind of aware of it and suggesting just put it out there, see what happens. Is Brad the only one facing charges? Is the immediate supervisor? Is he? So how did they avoid that? Because he was obviously aware of what happened too and just decided to focus on.
I would tell Brad not to answer this question for his own sake.
Okay.
Just because this is an active litigation.
Yeah, sure.
What
yeah.
I will say generally is the industry always tries to find a scapegoat.
Mm-hmm.
And they throw the weakest and most vulnerable person under the bus, while the rich and powerful people get off scot-free. And that is what's happening in this case. Brad is to them someone that they feel like they can scapegoat. They want to scare other workers from doing this sort of thing. They're not going to go after someone powerful, they go after someone they think is expendable. They're treating him like a commodity, which is not surprising, because this is a company that treats 30 million animals like commodities as well. Question?
I just wanted, I've heard you guys now say that you're going to Cafe Gratitude after this. I just want to make sure everybody here knows Cafe Gratitude and Gracias Madre slaughter their own animals and consume them.
We protested them for that, and we're gonna talk to the owners and managers there when we go there. It's gonna be a little gathering, but we're also gonna do a little protest there too. So don't worry, we're gonna get that message. Okay, one more question here.
What's the donation address for donation?
So there's a couple fundraising campaigns we're actively seeking right now funds for. One is Brad's fundraising, which is DxE.io/support-Brad. The other is a bigger campaign to establish the right to rescue. If I could get your attention for just one last question, and that's DxE.io/member. If you want to help us win the right to rescue, win not just Brad's cases, but the Sonoma County case, my cases in Utah, North Carolina, Sierra and Norman's case in North Carolina. We've got some activists in Colorado who got in some trouble. I just won one of my cases in Colorado because of our members. Even chipping in a couple bucks a month makes a big difference, because right now we get $100 for every new member of DxE. You also get to hang out with me once a month. So beyond this meeting, if you're getting too much of me, don't worry. You're not forced to come hang out with me if you're a member. You can tell me to go F off for the kids in the room. I'll say F off. And I won't force you to join the member video conference. But it is a lot of fun. We do everything from bake vegan cookies together to share tips on outreach. It's just a lot of fun to hang out with all the members of DxE. And until the end of the LC, every member who even chips in a couple bucks is getting us $100. So you can chip in $1 a month. We get $100. So if you're not a member, highly encourage you to do so. Highly encourage you to support Brad as well, because Brad does need support.
Does DxE.io support Brad?
DxE.io/support-Brad, and we'll text out this to you, some of these links to you, or you can, actually, I'll probably just text everybody, and then whatever you want to do, whether it's ALC, support Brad, or even coming to visit us in Berkeley and learn more about our chapter up in Berkeley, or hang out with the local activists like Brittany and AJ, who does such amazing work, or actually both Brittany's and AJ, who do such amazing work here, Brittany Michelson and Brittany Drake. You can ask me about those things. I'll make sure I text everyone and get your contact information to locals. And the other link is DxE.io/member. Okay, one last question, maybe more about the topic, in case anyone has a question about the topic they didn't get answered. No? All right, well, thank you all very much. Really appreciate you coming out here. We are going to hang out here for a bit. I love talking to people, so please come. Say something to me. I'm very friendly, so don't be hot and shy. And please come to ALC. And if you don't register before May 1st, the price for registration is going up in the next couple days. So register at DxE.io/ALC. Come hang out with me, Ava, Amy G, and Brad, and so many others. All right? Thank you all, and I'll see you at Cafe Gratitude.